Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear friends, students, today we will discuss the last part of this procurement management lectures. And this is more related to the extension in times claims. And the extension in time claims normally would mean that the claims which are arising from the extension in the time. Now, there can be different events in which the extension in time is required, and then certainly the contractor is entitled to additional compensation, and claims would come, and these claims are then sorted out according to the laid down procedures. Now, when we look at the nature of extension of time, we discussed this last time that there can be a situation in which the extension in time is on the part of the contractor. In this case, we may not allow any kind of claim. Even the escalation will be frozen at the last date of the period of construction. But in many cases, we see that the extension in time is not only due to the contractor fault. Many times the extension is required due to the release in funds problems, due to the possession of site, the suspension of the project due to some disputed site. Sometimes the government policies, the circumstances which are sometimes not within the control of the client. So the extension of time claim then would come from such kind of events in which the extension was on the part of contractor and on the part of client or the employer. And in this particular case, then certainly we would go for a certain specific procedure to ensure that the projects are executed successfully. So the EOT claims are the extension in time claims would involve 9 essential elements should be addressed while we are assessing the claims. The first is the event, the description of circumstances which give rise to change causing delay along with actions taken as per provision of contract, in particular a reference to the contemporary record. This is really very important. For example, if there is a delay due to suspension of the work by the due to some event, then definitely we would like to have a particular evidence on both sides to see that this delay has been caused by circumstances which were not controlled by the contractor. The second is the liability of the event. If responsibility rests with the employer or it is a natural event such as force majeure or the non-possession of site or the delay in release of funds or any other thing which could lead to the closure of project, suspension temporarily, or even the weather condition. So in such condition, the contractor may be entitled to the extension of time. However, this is dependent on the terms and condition of the particular contract. We will not discuss delay for which contractor is responsible here. So definitely when the contractor is responsible for delay, we know that then we would go for the liquidated damages, and that would depend on the spirit of contract. But anyhow, in this last check, we are purely explaining the circumstances where the employer had some problem like we have in a COVID condition at the moment. Now, this is purely a condition which is just like a force majeure, and the works and the projects have been closed and forced to close. Therefore, in such kind of a situation, there cannot be the fault of contractor, and we certainly would need to have an extension of time. And we also expect that there will be some claim out of this. Then the third important is contractual entitlement. Typically, construction contracts contain provisions entitling the contract to an extension of time on the occurrence of particular event, provided the progress of the work or time for completion is delayed as a consequence. For example, the FIDIC 1987 provides an entitlement of extension in time in the event of late drawings, class 6.4, adverse physical obstructions or conditions, class 12.2, suspension of work, class 40, failure to give possession of site, class 42.2, and so on. So there are various classes under the FIDIC, which then describes the justification for extension and time, and then again the claims or compensations. The fourth is contractual compliance. They generally within the EOT class, the contractor will be obligated to submit notices in detailed particulars within a specified time frame. Now, this is really very important that if there is any payment which is due on account of extension of time, then the contractor will be entitled under the class 44.2 of FIDIC to submit his claim within 28 days of such event. Fifth is cause and effect analysis. This is really very important that we would like to see that what is the relationship of that particular event with the extension of time, and whether there is a relationship or the cause-effect relationship or not. So to demonstrate cause and effect, a story should be prepared based on the fact describing the effects of the event upon the work. For example, in one of our projects of the engineering faculty, when the work was started in 2017, March or April, so almost after 1 month, there has been a dispute in the site, and the people of the adjoining villages then force the project staff to close the project, and then the work was suspended. The work remained closed for almost 1 year. And then when I joined as Vice Chancellor of the Procurement University, we tried to solve this. And this dispute resolution and this whole process might have taken almost 10 or 12 months. Now, this whole process was beyond the control of employer also, because there was a law and order situation, and the local government, the Deputy Commissioner Office advised the university to close the work. So under such conditions, then definitely there has been a cause and effect relationship of this. This delay in the contractor was contract was certainly due to these facts. The next is the baseline program and the regular updating on monthly basis by the contractor. This is one of the most important element to monitor the progress. Unfortunately, in most of the projects I have seen that the master programming or baseline programming is not well developed. As a matter of fact, this programming is the base for your monitoring and evaluation of the project. So my request to all the engineers would be that at the time of construction and contract, we normally need the contractor to develop his master plan or programming. And even if it is not obtained at this stage, normally this is not very detailed at this stage, but when we are signing the agreement and when we have the kickoff meeting of the project, then certainly we would require that there must be a well-defined and a well-detailed master programming of the project. Now, the seventh element of the extension of time claim is delay analysis. A delay analysis is conducted to demonstrate the effect of the events on the contractor's program. There are a number of methods to carry out this analysis, and here we are using the most preferred method of time impact analysis, that how this particular event has caused the delay of the project. For example, if we in the present circumstances would see that, for example, the project is no doubt going on in Gilgit, and the government has allowed the construction works to go. but still the supply chain disruption due to the COVID-19 and the ban on the R&D, the ban on the interprovincial transportation, the material supply is becoming really very difficult task. So then we have to see that how this particular event is causing the delay in the project, and definitely we have to see that how the availability of material can affect the or non-availability of material can affect the project's timeline. This will be found toward the end of this presentation, so we will see some problems. The eighth element is statement of claim. Every extension of time claim must contain an unambiguous statement of what a contractor is claiming with references to enclosed working. This is again very important because just by submitting an application without any evidence, justification, and all these is not acceptable. So there must be a very well-defined details. And finally, substantiation that extract and provide documentary evidence, letters, methods, statement, inspection, notices, progress reports, photos, minutes of the meeting, program, and schedule in the form of annexures as follows. Annex A, Annex B, Annex C. We will discuss the annexes at later. Now, this is a case study, and you see that a project was planned as a matter of fact. The dark is basically the grays is plane, and you can think of weeks or days. Let us assume that these are days because in the legend there is days. So what we have seen that, for instance, the planned activity A was beyond, beyond the schedule. Activity B was planned to be completed, but it started from 30th day and finished in 50th day. Activity C, which was supposed to be starting from something like 25th day, started from 30th day and then it ended at 50th day. And if we look at the activity C, which was supposed to be starting from something like 45th day and finished at 55th day, basically it was started from 50th day and it finished in something like if you look at the activity D, it was supposed to be finished at 50th day, 55th day, started 45th day and ended 55th day, but as a matter of fact, it was start. So if we look at the end of the activity D, the last activity which was supposed to be finished by the end of 55th day was a matter of fact finished in something like 100th day. So the difference between these two, I mean, from 100 we deduct the 55 or 57, whatever was the planned day of completion of the activity D. That is basically the delay in this. So the basic principle is the last activity which has been executed, the last day of the last activity will be considered for the analysis of the delay. So this process of analyzing a planned versus build schedule is not straightforward as one might think. The normal inclination is to compare both and then draw conclusion for the cause and magnitude of delay. For example, this slide shows that overall comparison of as built and as planned schedule, and one might conclude that the last activity was delayed by 43 days. As shown above, a more correct step-by-step analysis would prove this conclusion incorrect. But now the question is that whether this assumption is correct or not, because based on the last activity of the plane, we measured that that the delay is something like 43 days. But when we move forward in the remaining slides, you would see that this assumption is not correct. Now you see this. As a matter of fact, the activity A, which was supposed to be completed by end of 10th day, was completed something like end of 22nd day, and this created a delay of 12 days and this is the duration. As a matter of fact, we now look at this, and similarly, when we go for this shows that how balanced planned activity have been adjusted after delay. Now, what we have done that since the first activity has been delayed by something like 12 days, then we would try to balance. If you go into the big slide, uh, the first activity which was delayed by 12 days, and based on that, then we adjusted the remaining activities uh, so that we can uh, uh, start the second activity after the 22nd day, and then the remaining plans of the remaining activities done accordingly due to the delay of the first activity. Now, based on that, when we went to the second activity, which was supposed to be starting from the 22nd day, it could not start, and we could see that a delay was happened for 5 days. And based on that, this activity finished at 50th or 48th day. So when we went to the analysis of the second activity, or the third activity was, delayed for 13 days. The adjusted sprint schedule with actual delay of activity C appears in this slide. This shows that its start of activity C was such that it had an extended duration of 13 days. However, a careful review of the as-built information revealed that activity C actually did not have an extended duration, but instead has 2 interruptions as shown on next slide. Sorry, this was a series of slides. That it was executed basically in 3 different intervals. Initially, in the C, there was some delay for 3 days, and there was another delay for 10 days. So these 2 together made a 13 days delay. And when we went to the last slide, the slide shows that adjusted schedule of delay and activity C shows that activity D clearly was not itself delayed, but rather was bumped because of the delay of the preceding activity, that is ABC. The original conclusion that activity D delayed, we initially assumed that it has been delayed by almost 43 days. We delayed the project overall comparison of the as-built and as-planned schedule as incorrect. This helps us to carry out delay responsibility, liability, and also an easy way to identify excusable and inexcusable delays. Now, there are 2 types of delays. The one delay which is excusable, and the other delay which is inexcusable, which with their quantum. The total delays per belt schedule and as-planned schedule is 43 days, which appears to consume up to the activity C delays, and that means no delay in the activity D. So the activity D was, as a matter of fact, not delayed because the remaining 3 activities were delayed, and this activity was then, as a consequence of the initial 3 activities. The delay quantum and causes are investigated with the help of contemporary record and baseline program updates as provided with monthly reports by the contractor. This is for the reason that maintaining of contemporary record daily and monthly report is mandatory and is explained in the class 53 of the FEDEC 1987 and class which appears on next slides. Now, these are the entitlement for additional payments, claims for additional payments due to prolongation. Now, this is the extension in time due to which is not on the part of the contract, and there might have been some decision delay, there might have been some suspension. The cause of contractor claim for additional payment is the compensable delay event which obliged the contractor to continue to maintain resources on site and contribute to head office running costs for a period greater than which was originally intended. So for this, for example, if it was planned that the suspension would be for, let's suppose, 1 month, and it continued for longer period, then definitely. The contract provisions, they provide entitlement to additional payments are as follows. For example, the subclass 40.1 provides the suspension of work, that the contractor shall, on the instruction of the engineer, suspend the progress of the work or any part thereof for some time and in such manner as the engineer may consider necessary, and shall, during such suspension, properly protect and secure the work in such part thereof so for it as is necessary in the opinion of the engineer, unless such suspension is otherwise provided for in the contract. For example, we normally suspend the work in the cold weather in Gilgit, so this is normally provided in the special conditions. Number two, necessary by reason of some default or breach of contract for contractor, which is for which he is responsible. For example, if there has been some imperfect work or below specification work, and we stop the remaining part of the work unless the previous one, which is important to correct, this kind of suspension of the subsequent work can also be on the part of contractor. Necessary by reason of climatic condition. This is really it's important, and we normally include this in the contract. Necessary for the proper execution of work or for the safety of the work or part thereof to save the extent that necessity arises from any act of default by the engineer or by employer or from any of the risks defined in the plus 25.4. So these are sometimes, for example, if there is any high tension line which has to be shifted, or if there is some other important safety related decision which we normally take at site, and this is normally covered in the general obligations. Now the class 40.2, which is engineers orders for suspension, whereas class 40.1, this class applies the engineer shall, after due consultation with the employer and contractor, determine any extension of time which the contractor is entitled under class 44, and the amount which shall be added to the contract price in respect of the cost incurred by the contractor by reason of such suspension, and shall notify the contractor accordingly with the copy to the employer. The second, under 42.1, possession of site and access, save insofar as the contract may prescribe the extent of portion of the site of which the contractor is to be given possession from time to time. The order in which such portions shall be made available to the contractor and subject to any requirement in the contract. So much of the site, such access in accordance with the contract is to be provided by the employer and is to be required to enable contractor to commence and proceed with the execution of work in accordance with the program. So this again, the possession of site delay, which is not on the part of the contractor, and the employer has to pay the compensation for this extension in time. The subclass 42.2, failure to give the possession. If the contractor suffers delay and incurs cost from failure on the part of employer to give possession in accordance with the terms of subclass 42.2, the engineer shall, after due consultation with the employer and the contractor, determine, number one, any extension of time to which the contractor is entitled under class 44, and the amount of such cost which shall be added to the contract price, and shall notify the contractor accordingly with copy to the employer. So this is again very important, that if there has been any extension of time due to suspension of work or due to delayed possession of site, then it will be determined by the engineer. Normally, this kind of claim would include job site support losses such as the salaries of project supervisors, engineers, project managers, site vehicles, cost of temporary items such as toilets and fencing, camp offices. It is important to understand that one-time items or other costs, they are not related to have been deducted from the cost under consideration, as it is only time-related element, and that can be considered under this head. For example, the construction of site office or things like that. Another category is escalated labor, material, and equipment cost. Next, as contractor may also seek to recover costs related to idle equipment. Finally, delay claim entitled for unabsorbed home office overheads. For item 1 to 4, contemporary records would be necessary to substantiate these costs, whereas the number 5, which is the home office, uh, ECLI formula is used to allocate and calculate relevant costs for the period. Next two slides show the more details of these cost components. The time, for example, the case study of the prolongation claim, or the case of period prolongation for which the contractor has incurred additional cost, extension of time in the original completion date was 9 February 2013, but the revised completion date was 11 due to delay in the possession of site. So the prolongation period is 30 days, and this cost associated with this prolongation, the contractor entitlement to additional payment is cost plus reasonable profit. For the additional time that he was obliged to maintain his resources due to extension of time under the principle of recovery, the aggrieved party is entitled to be put back in the position in which he would have been had the contract been performed as originally. So any changes in the prices, any changes, the contractor claimed reasonable basis last 3 years audit account from balance sheet of the company, and that is 3.73% of the turnover on average. Appendix H and I series provide substantiation of the cost and necessary record. Site establishment cost. So this was this cost was related to the uh, 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 home office cost, and then site establishment cost, and consists of site staff, site establishment, transport, plant, equipment, and other items, time-related expense at site like security, lighting. For this particular example, the cost incurred is uh, worked out in the Appendix I, containing detailed calculation of site establishment, cost for the prolongation period while invoices, payroll, etc. in Appendix J. Contractual cost. Due to extended time for the completion of the work, the contractor has incurred additional cost towards maintaining certain contractual requirements, including insurance for the work, equipment, insurance against injury to persons, insurance against damages to property, and performance bond. The Appendix 1, 2, in next slides would tell us the cost of such contractual cost. Now, the head office cost and profits. The income from the projects not only support the project but also the cost of office. The contractor and so come under the purview of the heading. Also, the contractor has lost the opportunity of using these resources for other sites. So, formula from which is also called Edmonds or Recors formula, is normally used calculating such cost. The formula is in 2 stages. Stage 1, annual head office overhead charges, cost and profit into 100% divided by annual turnover. So that is H%, and then this is basically from the audited account we come to know about the overheads of the project and the profit of the contractor, and this profit of contractor is then divided by total turnover, and it gives us the percent of overhead and profits. And then we see that the contract sum and the contract period, a multiplied period of delay, that the contract sum is then the total sum and the contract period of delay multiplied by the period of delay. So in this way, we determine the amount which is recoverable on the grounds of the overhead cost or head office cost. The calculation of these additional costs is given next slide, and this becomes something like 149,401, and the summary of these are given in the last slide. Now, the finance cost, as project was delayed, the release of retention and other bonding arrangements were deferred for the period of prolongation for which the contractor was obliged to pay, and hence they need to be compensated. And then in this case, the delay was involved from October this to this, and the retention money withheld this was something like this, and the being confirmed by the separate letter that interest rate was this, Therefore, it was worked out for the delayed period and the cost which the contractor had to pay for this guarantee or for this insurance. The financing, for example, the retention we had was amount like 5.018 million. The interest rate is 4.25%. Interest per annum is something like this, and if we divide this by the day, then interest per day is becoming something like 0.54. And if we multiply this by 30 days, 584 rupees, and if we multiply this by 30 days, so the interest cost would become something like 17,520. So this is giving us a summary of the prolongation cost. Is contained in the 1 to 5. That site establishment cost is 148,942. Contractual cost is basically the cost of various bank securities, and then the head office overheads cost, and then we finance cost. So the total then is the 319, and then allowing some percentage depending on the nature of the project. Then, so this is the total amount due is 3,31,045, which is the total cost due to the prolongation of the project. So thank you very much. This leads us to conclude this lecture. Thank you. It's a very small lecture, but very, very important to determine the cost of prolongation, which is the cost associated with delay under the contract, which is beyond the control of the contractor.